Cindy here from Cindy B's Quilt Shop in Ontario. I have another step-by-step tutorial for you, great for the beginners out there. We will be making my roll and flip reversible tote. My pattern will be downloadable on my website, cindybsquiltshop.com. So if you like what you see today, don't forget to like this video as well as subscribe to my channel to be notified of more things as they become available. So let's get started. So here's what we need today. This is my main fabric. It's going to be the main part of my bag, and we picked this beautiful K facet floral today. It is cut 15 inches wide by 36. We have also cut a contrasting cuff. It is 9 inches wide by, again, 36. And to the back of this, I have fused a lightweight iron-on interfacing. I also have our lining fabric, which is again 15 inches by 36. It doesn't necessarily have to match our main fabric, but it does have to coordinate nicely with our cuff because that's going to show on both sides. We have our accent strip, our flange. It is cut 3 inches wide by, again, the 36. And I pressed it in half lengthwise, wrong sides together. Couple tools that I like to use for this. Oh, whoops. We also need some handle fabric. It's a piece 7 inches wide by the width of the fabric, and we're going to be cutting this down for the handles. We will also be putting interfacing on the back of this when we get to that part. Couple tools that I like. I want to have a purple thing. I use that for poking and prodding and helping push things through the sewing machine. We're going to need lots of pins. I do love the either the Clover silk pins or the Bohin extra fine. They're really nice and sharp to go through all the layers that we're going to have. And because we have so many layers of fabric, I recommend using a jean needle. I'm using a 90-14. And that will give us the extra strength that we need. Let's go. We are going to be sewing all our layers all at the same time. So we're going to layer them like this. We're going to put our cuff right side up. We are going to take our flange and we're going to align the raw edge to the top of our cuff. We are going to take our main fabric, we are going to place that right side down on top of our flange. And then we are going to take our lining and we're going to place that right side up. Again, we're lining up all these raw edges. Don't worry too much if it doesn't quite line up on the edges. We can trim those up after. So now that I have them all lined up, I want to take my main fabric and my lining and I am going to roll it up nice and snug, and I am going to fold my cuff over top of the linings. Now what I want to do is I want to line up all these edges, and things shift, but we'll get them all lined up nice. And now I'm going to pin. I'm not a pinner, but this is the one time you have to pin lots. There's lots of layers and things are going to shift. So take this time right now and get it all lined up and you'll be happier at the end of the day. I missed my flange. I'm just going to go back and get that in there. So make sure you put the pins in this direction. So if you're a lefty, I suggest turning it around and putting the pins in this way. So now that when we have it in our sewing machine, we'll be able to remove them as we sew. Let's go to the sewing machine. So I've got my regular foot on there. It's about 3/8 of an inch wide. So I'm going to use the edge of my foot to give my guide for my seam. So I'm just going to backstitch a little bit and sew down to the end. As I come to a pin, I am going to remove it. I did use this foot because there's so many layers that I wanted to make sure that I'm going to catch all the layers in case something shifts a little bit. And we're going to backstitch on this end. All we have to do now is turn this inside out. Little tip, if you take your cuff and completely fold it back on all the sides, then we can just pull our bag and work this out. It'll only take a minute. Some people call this birthing our bag. Let's get our pressing mat and give this a little press. So what I want to do first is just make sure I'm going to finger press this up. We don't want to have any foldy overs, and I'm going to go to this side first. So on the back, I'm just going to make sure that this seam here is pressed all the way open. I don't want to press all the way to the top yet. I don't want to press a fold in there. I just want to get this seam. Now I can turn it over. And I will press this seam, again, making sure that it's all the way open. And I can now press the top of my cuff. You can already see what the bag's going to look like. We've got our lining with our cuff. We've got our main fabric with our fancy little flange and our top cuff. Let's get this together. So first seam, what we're going to do is we are going to fold them wrong sides together. So our linings together. I want to match up this seam right here. Let's get rid of a few of those threads. So I want to make sure that the flange lines up, the seam lines up, our top of our cuff, and our bottom. Here's a little tip. If for some reason you've got a little bit of the fabric that's not lined up, it's a little crooked, no worries. We can just grab our rotary cutter and we can trim off this edge. So what I've done is lined up a ruler along our seam with just a little bit of our extra fabric, and I'm going to give this a trim. It's just going to get rid of those fuzzy edges, and it's going to make our life a whole lot easier. And I can also do it on this end as well. line up a line of my ruler onto the fold. And we'll just trim a little bit of that off. Life is good. We're going to give this some pins. We don't need quite as many pins on this layer. Just going to line up the top. Off we go. Alrighty, I'm just going to change my foot, and I'm going to use my 1/4 inch foot for this seam. So what we're actually doing is we're going to be making a French seam. I am going to align my 1/4 inch to take the 1/4 inch seam on the edge of my fabric, and I am going to backstitch. And then off to the front. Because of the layer, some sewing machines don't want to, they kind of balk at the layers, so we sometimes have to help it get started. If you are having a lot of difficulty getting it going, some machines you can also maybe change your foot pressure, put a little bit less pressure on, and that will help get the layers together. And I also like to use my purple thing just to hold things going. I'm just going to remove my pin. Okay, now I'm coming to a lot of layers there. And I'm going to actually help it along by putting a little bit of pressure on the back, and I'm going to sew slowly. Let the machine work for you. There we go. Now it should be smooth sailing. I am going to sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge. So the edge that I'm coming up to, I'm going to stop. I'm going to put my needle in the down position and lift my foot up, and I can just pivot all the way around. This machine I'm sewing on today, the Quilt Expression 720 by Pfaff, lifts the foot up automatically, so it makes my job a little bit easier. So this is our fold, so I don't have to sew up the other side, so I'm just going to sew off and backstitch. Cut my thread. Now I'm going to take my bag and I am going to turn them right sides together. Oh, whoops. First off, we're going to trim that little corner. We're just going to get a little bit of the bulk away. I want to make sure that I don't trim too close to the stitches. Just going to turn my corner, flip my seam, stick that in. Again, I'm going to fold my seams over. I've stuck my fingernail up inside. Just going to give this a nice push, and I can get pretty much a nice sharp corner. For the rest of my corner, I am just going to take my purple thing and I'm just going to push that out. If you don't have one of those, just use a bamboo skewer or something not too sharp, You don't want to tear your fabric. And I can also run this along my seam. I want to make sure that my seam is open all the way. Just going to pin these a little bit. Again, it's getting even thicker there. Just roll it in between your fingers and make sure that it's open, and we'll put in a few pins. Another little post-COVID tip for you. You know these stationary things for when you're counting or doing paperwork? If you wet your fingers and you can roll like this, you can get a nice sharp seam. I know we're not supposed to lick our fingers anymore. Alrighty. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put, again, my other foot back on my 3/8 inch foot. And this time I'm going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam. We want to make sure that we are going to encase fully the seam that we previously sewed, and it's such a bump there, so by going over 1/2 inch, that'll help out a little bit. My sewing machine does have a 1/2 inch mark here where I can align my fabric, and if you don't have a mark on your sewing machine, this is what you can do. Align a ruler with your 1/2 inch mark, lined up with where your needle's coming down, and then mark the edge somehow, whether it be with a black Sharpie marker, or I have this purple seam edge that I can see really well. Even if it is a few layers of masking tape, give yourself an edge where you can see and to follow. Again, I'm going to back stitch at the top. This is a lot of layers, so go slow. If you pull too hard, you're going to break your needle. And this is the hardest part of the whole bag, is just getting over this hump. So nice and slow across there, and now we're off to the races. Again, stop at that 1/2 inch from your edge with your needle down, lift your foot, we'll pivot around and go off the back. I need to take one more stitch. There, that's better. So our bag is almost finished. All we have to do is the handles, but you can see this main part. It has beautiful, nice finished seams. That, remember, is our inside. And again, folding our corners, flipping these out. We can give this a little press, open up our seams, and we'll be good to go. Let's make some handles. So now I have just given the edges a little press, rolled out those seams nicely and pressed it so everything's lying nice and flat onto our handles. I've taken my 7" by width of fabric piece and I've cut it in half and I've removed the salvages. I ended up with about 21.5" wide pieces. So I have cut my interfacing in half as well, and as luck has it, it was the perfect size for my strips, but I do want to make sure that it is a 1/2 inch narrower than what my handles are. So you can see I have a generous 1/4 inch on each end. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some kind of basting glue, whether it be your temporary basting glue, a 505, or even if it's a child's school glue, they're usually acid free, you can use that as well. And we're just going to roll these edges over and give them a little press. That will dry our glue and hold them in place. This one is Roxanne's Basted. I'm going to do that with each handle, but I'm just going to work on this one right now. I'm going to take my handle and lengthwise I am going to fold it in half, wrong sides together, so I can find that center mark. I turned the steam off of my iron because it gets too hot on my fingers at this stage. Open it up and take your raw edges and press them to your fold. This is going to encase all our raw edges inside our handle. So we're going to do the one side. Now we are going to fold it again in half. I'm going to align my 2 folds and I'm going to press one more time. This time I'm going to add some steam because I want this to be nice and flat. I'm going to do the same thing with my other handle. At this point, I like to do a little top stitching on my handles to keep the layers together. And this is also a little bit decorative. You can use one of the decorative stitches on your sewing machine. You could also use maybe even just a triple stitch. This time I'm just going to use a straight stitch. It goes a little bit faster. You can use matching thread colors. You can use contrasting thread colors. I like to use one that if it's the same color as my handle that's a little bit darker, it just gives a nice element to it. You can also use lots of different fancy stitches and justify needing those machines. So this is how I set up to do a top stitch. You can see that the edge of my foot is right against the edge of my fabric, and I am going to move my needle all the way to the right. So that is going to leave us about 1/8 of an inch. If your sewing machine doesn't move, if the needle doesn't move, and it's in the middle position, you will just have to align your foot that way. So whatever works best for you. I can do it this way. If you can see, can you zoom in? With this foot, I have a teeny tiny little red mark there. So I'm going to use that to align the edge of my fabric, and then I can move my needle over just a couple more stitches and it'll be nice and close to the edge. So I'm just going to start sewing at one of my narrow ends. And I'm going to do a lock stitch or back stitch if you don't have a lock stitch function. Sew to the edge, needle down, lift your foot, and pivot. And we're just going to sew all the way around. It doesn't want to go here because of all the layers, so here's a little trick. I'm going to take one of my heavier pins and I'm just going to put my pin in behind my needle. And I am just slowly going to sew and put a little bit of pressure on my pin. It will get over the hump and on to the next side. Let's just trim away that thread. And lock or back stitch at the end. So you can see that extra layer of interfacing in there gives us a really nice handle. So I have both our handles sewn, and let's attach them to the bag. We are going to measure 4 inches in from the edge and 1.5 inches down. And that's where I am going to align my handle. I like to have the folded edge to the inside with our nice, our nice fold edge to the outside and the seam part to the inside. So I've got my ruler on the 4. I'm going to align the bottom of our strip at the 1.5 inch mark, and I am just going to put a little pin. Before I put the pin, I am just going to give myself some registration marks because I want to sew my handle on. I'm going to go all the way around and the exits. Now I can pin and make sure I pin only to one layer. It's going to go a little crooked this way, but I'm just going to fix that before I sew. Just this is holding it in place. Again, 4 inches from the edge. I'm going to measure 1.5 inches down. Take your handle and make sure it flips properly, that you don't get a twist in there. So again, my folded edge is to the outside. Aligned 1.5. I can give myself some registration mark. This is just chalk, so it will come off easily. And give this a pin. So if your sewing machine has the free arm section, this would be a great time to use it. This one does, so I'm going to remove this. Now you can see that the bag will fit down underneath and reduces some of that bulk. So we can sew this all in one go, start and stop. We want to sew twice on the top and twice on the bottom just for that extra strength. So I'm going to start in the bottom corner. I'm going to lock my stitches. And I'm going to sew up to our chalk line. Our chalk line is just below the edge of our bag. I'm going to sew up our previous stitched line. Needle down, pivot, sew across the top. Just make sure that your chalk line is on top of your bag. Get rid of this pin now. I am now going to sew from corner to corner. Let's get rid of this thread. I want to make sure that I don't have any bag underneath. Pivot, sew across the bottom. I am going to sew up my other diagonal. Sewing right to that corner. You can see my chalk line's off a bit, but I don't care. I'm going to sew to where I want it to be. I am going to sew across the top. And that part is the sewing. So we're going to sew across or down the side. And one last time across the bottom. Lock our stitches and we're good to go. So we're going to do that 3 more times and we'll be done. And just like that, ta-da! We have a finished bag. Beautiful encased seams, no raw edges, reversible, so good for 2 in 1. So this one is the large size, like I said, and here is the small one. It would make a wonderful book bag for the kiddies for school, or ta-da! It makes an absolutely wonderful trick-or-treat bag. Again, you can see with this handle, I used one of the triple stitches, so it gives it that really heavy thread look. It's kind of neat. It's just a different look. And I hope you try this project. It would be really great for all our kids for trick-or-treating, and then still it's not just a one-trick pony. You can turn it the other way around and use it for your book bag or your school bag or your gym shoes or whatever you have it. So thanks for joining me today. Don't forget again to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like, and you will be informed of more videos as they become available. Happy sewing!